comes. I put 9 minutes on the screen. That's roughly how long we think it may have taken. We'll never really know. We don't have any sort of empirical evidence because there was no way of seeing me, because the vessel was nearly 250 meters away at this point and completely out of control. They were unable to regain control of the vessel. They were trying to do that manually, not really a system that's designed for that purpose. But what they did have in the water that day was a remotely operated vehicle, an ROV, which had a tether that was about 250 meters long, 300 meters long. So eventually they were able to swim that back over to me. And that footage I showed you right at the beginning, that sort of slightly harrowing footage of my twitching body, I'm going to show you some more, but not really to try and shock you, but that was sort of the ROV finding me. I really show it just to show you can perhaps see a water line in the helmet there, so we still don't really know quite why I didn't drown. You can also see me twitching. People are wondering if I was waving at the camera. I can tell you I'm definitely not waving. We don't know if that was perhaps, we talked briefly about oxygen toxicity, too much pressurized oxygen, because that emergency gas has a higher percentage of oxygen, so it could be that. Or more likely, we think a build-up of carbon dioxide in my helmet caused sort of a hypercapnic poisoning, which apparently that's quite a normal thing to see, a very unnatural twitching and movement. The reason I show you this really, I'm showing you 30 seconds a minute, but this footage goes on for nearly 35 minutes. I'm not talking about trauma today, but I'll tell you that I don't really feel I suffered any, and yet the people who had to witness this, which was everybody in the boat, we have 100 people on that vessel, just to facilitate putting us on the seabed, had to stand powerless, really, and watch a colleague, and hopefully for one or two, a friend, effectively dying on the seabed, something that would have had profound professional implications, of course, but also personal implications for them all. And many of them did suffer trauma. They suffered sleepless nights, left the industry altogether. So it's amazing how a crisis, an incident of any nature, you hear it a lot from soldiers as well, affects those who witness it as much, if not more, than those who are directly involved.
That's a very lovely Duncan. If you've seen the film, you've probably fallen in love with. He's very much the nice man that you see in the film, but I'll tell you a bit more about him later. But yeah, obviously a very strange place to, never mind to work, it's a very strange place to live. And the truth of the matter is that for me, the diving and the working side of things that's the respite every day. I won't quite go as far as say it's a pleasure, but it's certainly the release every day you get out of this place, because the skill in the job for me is being able to live essentially amongst other people in a very difficult place. If you're somebody who values, as you see there, values his privacy, forget it. It's not for you. If you get claustrophobic, it's not for you either. It's you need to be able to deal psychologically with the fact that when that door shuts on day one and the system is pressurized down, those 4 days of decompression that we talked about earlier, they can't be circumnavigated. So if your mother dies, if your appendix bursts, you break a leg, it doesn't matter. You still have to go through those 4 days. So it's a prison of sorts, really, without the exercise yard. So you need to be able to somebody who can deal with that psychologically. But there is no escape from a very small environment. You also need to be able to get on with people, which I'm sure is pertinent to your jobs as well.
I knew Chris. I knew Morag. I was wondering how we're going to explain it to that we went on a dive and he never came back. Yeah, I was struggling to contain myself.
I don't like to labour those moments on the bottom, or those last moments, if you want to call it that. I'm very conscious that I'm well and relatively healthy and stood in front of you today, and people are given notional death sentences every day through cancer diagnoses and things like that. But obviously it was a very strange set of circumstances. At least I felt to have this, almost the luxury of reflecting on what I thought was going to be my impending doom for a few minutes. And your thoughts turn, obviously, I'm a pretty selfish person at heart. I think most people are in some way. But I don't remember being scared, as I said. I remember really thinking of the enormous damage I was going to do to the people at home, people who I was lucky enough to have love me, the unnatural order of my parents being told of my death before theirs. I was in my early 30s at the time, an exciting time of life. I was getting married the following spring. That didn't work out, so I shouldn't have worried, actually. But uh, anyway, I shouldn't laugh. I was in the process of building a house, so it was, a life in front of me, hopes and dreams of a future, of children, of a life well lived, of traveling to Dubai. And it felt as though all of these things were about to be taken away from me. And not just taken away from me, but taken away from me in this alien, lonely place. I grew up in a middle-class family in Cambridge in England. There was something in me thought, well, how on earth has this happened? How on earth is it here in this place that you're going to end your days? And how is it in this circumstance? It almost seemed unbelievable. Someone who, probably the biggest part of the job is when that door shuts, that 4 days of decompression can't be circumnavigated. You can't avoid that. If you break a leg, if your mother dies, if your appendix bursts, it doesn't matter. You still have to go through those 4 days of decompression. So you need to be someone who can deal with that psychologically. It's a pressure, it's a resilience, which we learn through familiarity, much the same way you do. From a working perspective, we work almost exclusively in the oil and gas industry, out here in the Middle East, North Sea, Gulf of Mexico, west coast of Africa, anywhere where there's oil-rich environments and deep water. It's a job, as I mentioned, the people often imagine you finning around, but the vast majority of the infrastructure that we work on is actually on the seabed. So most days you're wearing a pair of yellow fisherman's wellies and working away on the seabed. But it's quite a diverse job. You'll have days when you are doing fairly intricate electronic and hydraulic work. You'll have days when you're putting pipelines together, moving things around with lift bags. There are also days when you might spend 6 hours at a time on the seabed lugging sandbags around and wishing you'd worked a little bit harder.